why I work every day. I'll be making money till I'm in my grave. Don't care what they say. About time with my money left to the bank, cause it's funny, the money keep coming. I manifest it. See these lyrics and you'll get it. I'm the bank, I'm invested. I get tracked and I have it. Money finds me attractive. I'm the type to make commas, turn a profit. I'm the boss with the Wonka, but it ain't chocolate. I'm just being honest, don't work for this shit. I'm usually modest, but it's being lit. So I'm going off the list, talking my shit. Yeah, I'ma be the hottest designer in trend. I'm just coming with the wildest. I gotta admit that I'm usually modest, but I work hard for my shit. I do the work, yeah, I do it till it hurts. I'll invest in my future, I'll invest in my purse. I wanna be so rich, life changes, and I don't ever think about how much I just pay it. Yeah, it's a dream, the American dream. Live on top, don't stop till you got everything. But there's balance, cause this life is a challenge. You gotta live in the now, I'm building on the top of make commas, turn a profit. I'm the boss with the Wonka, but it ain't chocolate. I'm just being honest, don't work for this shit. I'm usually modest, but it's being lit. So I'm going off the list, talking my shit. Yeah, I'ma be the hottest designer in trend. I'm just coming with the wildest. I gotta admit that I'm usually modest, but I work hard for my shit. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. So keep working till it's hurting, cause that's when you start deserving everything you want, everything you need. Trust the process, you just gotta keep on working till you bleed. Yeah, been there, yeah, done that. 10 long years of breaking my back, but now I'm up here, never looking back. I got more dreams that I wanna go attack. Keep on going, keep on moving, never give up. I'll keep going, I can do just what I'm made of. I got that fire in me, got that desire. I'm never tired, I'll be pushing till I'm finally free. I was made to break away from the pack, to challenge, to fight, and to find my own path. This world wasn't made for the weak, they don't last. Survival of the fittest, so be vicious and attack. I'm the type to make commas, turn a profit. I'm the boss with the Wonka, but it ain't chocolate. I'm just being honest, don't work for this shit. I'm usually modest, but it's being lit. So I'm going off the list, talking my shit. Yeah, I'ma be the hottest designer in trend. I'm just coming with the wildest. I gotta admit that I'm usually modest, but I work hard for my shit.
All right. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 13, Week 9. And as everyone should hopefully be able to see now, we have a very special guest with us tonight. But before we get to him, Cal, how you doing, my man?
Shoot, that's my first time. Josh is making me nervous right now, so I was on mute. I mean, we have a special guest in our house, and I'm fumbling all over myself. No, honestly, it was not a bad week. Well, I'm sure we'll get into. I will hype myself up for sure a little bit later. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm going to reserve that for a much better time. But overall, yeah, not too bad. Not too bad this week.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I certainly can say the same for myself. I think we both had arguably our best weeks of the year, so can't complain too much about that. But before I guess we get into anything else, let's welcome our special guest, Josh. I guess I'll start off by saying welcome. It is awesome to have you back. For those who don't know Josh, he was the former owner of the Giants in the ABL, who, you know, we'll talk a little bit more about them certainly in a little bit here. But Josh, I guess my first question to you is, how are you, man?
You know, I was doing well, Tyler. Thanks for asking. But today I had gotten my hopes up because, you know, there were rumors about all these players that had bet on MLB games, and I thought maybe there's some hope for the Red Sox. Maybe Alex Cora has been betting against the Red Sox, and that would explain all of his terrible managerial decisions. But alas, it was another Red Sox or ex-Red Sox that was involved in the scandal. So today's going pretty poorly, but in honor of Cora not finding another way to cheat, I am wearing my Dodgers. I don't know if you can see it. I'll spin around. My Dodgers Alex Cora jersey in support of Cora, and of course in support of my old best bud Joe.
Oh man, I love it so much. It is just the storylines write themselves. Honestly, I mean, it's just too good, right? It's just too good. Well, I'm glad to hear you're doing well. Obviously, certainly would hope your Red Sox would maybe be doing a little bit more, a little bit less, I guess. I don't know which side of the fence you're falling on there, but that's awesome to hear. We got a long, obviously, list of things to talk about tonight, like we normally do. We'll get to power rankings, get to dump date stuff, all that kind of talk, which obviously I know we're excited to hear kind of your opinions on from an outside perspective. But first and foremost, I know certainly it's a question that was talked about, kind of at the end of last year when you had kind of made the announcement about how you wanted to leave. But I know there's a lot of us who got to know you really well and develop a relationship with you. We're curious. Any regrets about leaving ABL, or what's your fantasy life kind of like now that you're outside of what many have claimed to be the greatest fantasy baseball league on the planet?
Believe it or not, my fantasy life right now is non-existent. I'm in 0 fantasy baseball leagues.
Okay.
I think it was 2 years ago, I made the decision to cut every single league I was in except the ABL.
Okay.
And I guess you could say maybe that was the result of me seeing some writing on the wall as far as what led to me eventually actually leaving the ABL.
Sure.
But as far as regret, I don't know if I'd call it regret. There's obviously a lot I miss. Like you said, just bantering with people day to day, kind of the relationships I had developed. I miss that a lot. And then obviously also, I miss running a fantasy baseball team. But, I just got done with a very busy high school baseball season.
Yeah,
and I don't think looking at, I'm just now seeing your power rankings, and I don't think I could have done as good of a job as Rourke has done with the Giants. Manage that alongside managing a bunch of 15 and 16-year-old boys. So seeing that honestly actually makes me feel a little better that Rourke is doing well with the Giants.
Good. Yeah. We'll, like I said, we'll get to that here in just a couple seconds. Rourke's been obviously we miss you, and certainly are happy that you're happy with where you're at. But yeah, Rourke's done a pretty incredible job with the team over there for sure. So I'm glad to hear that, though. I guess my only follow-up question, and certainly Cal, feel free if you have anything you want to ask too. But my only follow-up question is there still some fantasy baseball in you in the future, or are you just kind of liking where you're at right now?
I like to think there is. I didn't want to get too serious too quickly, but I think for me there was some stuff I needed to work on personally about like how seriously I take fantasy baseball, and how people just even making a joke can flip a switch on that brings outside of me that maybe I don't appreciate as much. So yeah. I don't know if I don't really want to get into that too much, but I feel like there's some stuff I have to figure out before I delve back in, and if at least to a league that is as serious as this. And I still consider the ABL like probably the greatest league in the world, and definitely my favorite league I've ever been in. So I like to think maybe as I mature. Sure. Even though Cal I think's a couple years younger than me, where I can be more like Cal, just having a good time, joking around. That's what I'm trying to.
Yeah, that's where you start from. Just be mad, and it's not gonna hurt as much.
You have to be chill, right? When you're sitting there, you got to be chill. No,
while it's all burning around you.
Exactly right. And obviously that's great to hear. Obviously we're happy, you're happy, and everyone goes through stuff, right? You gotta figure it out and figure out your real life before you move on to the fantasy side of things for sure. So awesome to hear that. Cal, anything else, or are we good to move on to?
Yeah, two things actually. One, okay. I noticed that it feel like the reasoning behind it felt like a very Tom Brady kind of aspect, where it's just like you take it so seriously that it gets to you, and it's like you get that sparkle in your eye. If someone tries to mess with you, and you just get a little riled up. I mean, you got a little bit of Brady in you with that whole thing. Like, I totally understand it. But another thing was, how do you watch baseball, man? I mean, I wouldn't even know how to function if I didn't have like 4 guys in the game that can't get a hit, can't get a strikeout. Yeah, how do you do it?
Well, the answer is I have been watching high school baseball, and
Yeah,
if you can watch high school baseball, you can watch any form of baseball. 'Cause you see just the worst baseball you've ever seen at that level. So that's how I think that's the answer. When you get beaten down, then you go back and watch the Red Sox, and you're like, you know what? We
good at
aren't that
managing.
bad after all.
I'm not. I can coach this high school team.
Oh man, that's a great honest answer about not only the state of high school sports in general in the scope compared to professional sports, but just how you view your favorite professional team as well. Like maybe these guys could be high school, right? It could be that bad. So well, that's awesome. Well, let's move on kind of to our power rankings standings conversation. I'm gonna flip us over here. So we'll normally, Josh, and just so everyone's aware, Josh has a very vague understanding of kind of what we're doing tonight. He is mainly here just to, provide some banter, give us an awesome guest, to kind of give maybe a subjective but outside viewpoint of kind of where things are at. So, just so you know, he's not running anything or doesn't have anything crazy. He's just here to have fun and give some insight. So, we're going to do
pot
our
shots if we don't want
exactly. Take the pot shots without any sort of repercussion.
No recourse.
No repercussion. So we're going to do our normal stuff though. So we'll kind of just go through our power rankings and standings, and Josh, I'll kind of ask for your, maybe your reactions to certain things or whatever it might be. So we'll start off with mine, Cal, if you're all right with that.
Yep.
I kind of took the whole AL on my back this week, and I shouldn't say on my back personally, but took the whole AL with me up in the top 10 here, where the Tigers, Yankees, Twins all moved up a couple of spots, all had decent weeks, and now I believe, are even in the top 10 with 5 AL and 5 NL. Most people are still, I think, arguing that the NL certainly is kind of the cream of the crop for sure, but including the Giants over there. But it's just, again, nice to see that we have, at least 5 teams being represented in the top 10 of the rankings. So that was kind of my first take on it.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I had is I feel like kind of our notes are pretty heavily in AL, so I'll start with maybe an NL, kind of throw that in there. But listen, can't really head in the AL this week. We don't have much going for us at the moment, so NL will have their time later in the season, so we'll take what we get. But Marlins with a massive 3-0 week. So I think they're 6-0 in their past 2 weeks.
Huge.
And I think they're already in third place going into this whole stretch. And they've also become buyers as well, as we've seen today.
Crazy
it's just wild. We'll get into that later. But I mean, after going 6-0 the past 2 weeks, it feels pretty good. I would feel real nice being 6-0.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that NL East plays out. But yeah, so far so good. Some
context, Josh, for you on the Marlins side of things. For the most part, been a middle of the road type team. Kind of bottom half of the playoffs, certainly. But somehow, like the past 2 weeks, they, like Cal said, 6-0, scoring points, beating a couple of decent teams, and then this week again, we'll talk that they're making some trades as if they are buying into a very difficult NL, so very kind of interesting to see. My next one is about the A's. They have had some crazy up and down weeks. They failed to score 200 points this past week, and yet somehow they did drop 4 spots, but they're still top 10 in the league. I didn't take a deep dive into David's team, but I think it probably just came down to he had a lot of guys just perform like absolute garbage throughout the week, but I was very, very surprised by that. And then I'm going to save my point for last. The last thing we'll bring up, and I'll get Josh's kind of opinion on something within that as well. But what are your last 2 things that you had?
Well, I'll stick with the non-sad AL East teams this week, and we'll go with the Orioles, kind of keeping their they had to face the Yankees, who are coming right on their heels.
Yep.
And they kind of slipped this week, being a top 10 team with the O's and having 250-point week. It's not what you want to see.
Yeah,
but
they got lucky.
Even though they got lucky for sure, because they were able to beat the Yankees. So they went 1-2. They didn't really drop that far in the rankings. Honestly, better than probably went better than it could have.
Yes.
So they stay atop the AL East, but my man Gary with a huge 300-point week goes 3-0, moves up 5 spots in the rankings. I don't really know where it came from. I don't think they've come close to 300 points all year.
No.
Maybe they did. I just don't remember. But that was one thing that just jumped off the screen to me, is seeing the Blue Jays that high.
Well, and I think too, and Josh, this is something that you can probably comment on, because I'm sure you remember Gary pretty well. It was turned into a really big trade guy, making tons of moves and stuff like that. And as far as I know, I mean, he maybe made one trade so far, like really in this season. He made some moves in the offseason, did a lot of trading pre-auction. And then I had a conversation with him. I can't even remember. I think it was someone on his team. I had a conversation with him about it. And he essentially said to me, I'm not really looking to move much of anything right now. And so I guess before I get into my last point, Josh, that was going to be kind of my question to you as again, someone who really was always in a position to buy, right? Always in a position to compete. Gary right now is not. He's in the very middle of the pack. He's 16th in the power rankings. He was 21st last week. Record-wise, I should even look. Record-wise, he is he's 12 and 15 right now, so he's on the outside of the AL playoff picture looking in. You know, if you were in his shoes in that sense, and again, not knowing his team or his roster or anything like that, you know, what's your mindset knowing that, you know, he kind of told me he was looking to kind of stay pat right now?
I mean, well, my first thought is, has someone checked in on Gary? Like, have we sent Frank to make sure Gary's okay? What did you say? One trade?
Yeah, I think
that doesn't sound like Gary at all.
Dude, the no Tony, Sam with the more important things going on. It's like, and Gary just, I mean, it's crazy. This league is nuts now. You wouldn't even recognize it. It's crazy, the lack of trading.
Yeah, and when that's Josh, remind me, were you still in the league when the dump date was put into play?
It is possible, but
I can't remember if you were or not.
I didn't play a season with that rule, and I didn't. At that point, I must have been checked out enough to know that rule didn't impact me.
Yeah, probably not, because that I think would be a bigger part of this conversation if we were talking about that. It's been talked to death at this point, but essentially a dump date was put in where until June 1st, teams essentially couldn't make trades that would quote unquote make their roster worse, right? So you couldn't trade an MLB player for a prospect, essentially. You couldn't trade a high end guy for and lose a position, right? And have to put a minors guy in a starting position or something like that. So that's part of what has, I guess, pushed some of the trades down. But yeah, interesting to say. But anyway, back to my question. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, without knowing the team, it's hard to answer, and I'm also trying now to remember the specifics of the question. But I would say in general for Gary, he had a very clear philosophy for this is now his third year in the ABL, so for 2 years, very clear philosophy. And I don't know if you're Gary, you would say it worked. As well as maybe he was hoping to work. I'm not sure the particulars of if Gary is in the green or red. I mean, I think most of us are in the red, but
yeah,
I would think you have to try something new. I don't know how I feel about going with as drastic of a decision as going from like the guy who trades with everyone to the guy who trades with no one. That seems very hard for someone to fight against maybe who they are. Their DNA to make a decision like that. But on the surface, I don't hate the idea of trying something different if you're Gary.
Well, and that's, I feel like it's part of why I wanted to throw that at you, is because I have always felt and always did feel like you were someone who knew exactly who you were, exactly the kind of team you wanted to run, the type of players you wanted, etc. And to me, I felt the exact same way about Gary. I'm like, this guy, he's a different person. Right? It's almost like he built this team up over the past really like year and a half of lots of trades, and now he's slowing down a lot. And it's interesting to me, and I did want to correct myself too. So since the start of the season, he has made 4 trades total, 2 of which actually came post due date. They came today, which I saw the one this morning, which was essentially nothing. He got a $2 fab for a couple of guys. But he actually, I didn't even see this, like 2 hours ago, he actually traded for Luis Robert, which is pretty crazy. He gave up a couple, or he gave up 3 different guys for Robert. So again, I guess maybe this is the start of him going for stuff. I don't know, but Yeah, interesting start there. I'm going to move on to my third piece.
Wait, real quick.
Go for it.
Can I just give a high-level rundown of teams that stand out to me before you give this last point you've been saving?
Yeah, go for it.
First one, the White Sox, second to last. Steven, really, I don't know if you guys can hear it. Sounds like a lawnmower just came into my house. Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is loud. Okay, maybe we should just go to your point and then come
it's
back.
not as loud as you think it is, but there's some buzzing going.
All right, it's gone. I have legitimately no idea what that could have even been. It was unfathomably loud. But yeah, the White Sox. Steven amped up Tom as this great owner. So I was curious, if I had stayed in the league, what would Tom have done?
Yeah.
It seems like he's biding his time. That to me is actually a little scary. Maybe he's waiting to strike, waiting for something specific. Because I've heard Tom talk on Steven's podcast, and I know that guy knows what he's doing. So, but that stood out to me. Him in second to last. The next one is Sam, 26th. I mean. I felt like Sam had a good team when I left, but that seems very Sam to just maybe just take it an entirely different direction. That's probably the most drastic difference between where their team was at when I left versus where they are now. The Diamondbacks and Braves obviously have had quite a fall from grace. The Royals down in 15th, right in the middle of the road, and I saw some of their trades today. I wonder what's going on there. That's all I'll say about that. Las Vegas Athletics, I just had to note I like seeing Las Vegas there instead of Oakland. Duke kind of just hanging out in the top 10. Like Duke, I also don't think made any trades yet. Nope. It seems to just be kind of his philosophy now. He went from be force in the league to just kind of being happy, being just perennially good, and then taking his chances with the coin flips down the road. Tyler, I'm glad to see you back in the top 10. Orioles. Sometimes I question if Steven cares about anything other than having the most unknown farm system. But it seems like he has put some effort into his team this year to get up to 5th.
Yes.
And then of course, love seeing the Giants ahead of the Dodgers. It looks like the Giants were first last week.
They were,
which I love to see. That either means they had a tough week or played some really bad opponents. You could probably tell me.
They had a tough week.
They had a tough week. Okay.
Yeah.
That's disappointing to hear, but still ahead of the Dodgers. That's all.
They played. It looks like they played the second hardest schedule last week, so that contributed a lot to it.
Yeah, and that sometimes will boost you up in these power rankings.
Every now and then,
you can only go one way if you're at the top, which is down. Adam in second. That's awesome. That is feels like a guy that maybe everyone could actually get behind if he were to pull one of these things out.
Yep.
And actually, I think Jeff's another one of those guys. So good to see those two first and second.
Yeah. I think your point about Adam, certainly he's always obviously been a good team. He's always led the NL East, etc. And this year he has a very good team. There has been a lot of talk, obviously, surrounding the dump date and who the buyers are, who the sellers are. He is probably, maybe outside of myself, he's and I guess maybe Duke too. He's someone who has not made a big splash, a big move yet, which a lot of people I think were thinking he would, because the Mets have made massive moves and the Marlins have made massive moves. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what Adam ends up doing with that. But the last point, I don't want to forget it, because it is worthy of celebration, is our man Cal goes and has a huge week this past week and gets a sweep across the board to bump the Angels up. It's not enough to get out of that 28, 29, 30 spot, but it's a start. And you and I talked last week about you being able to potentially celebrate after this. I got to ask, how do you feel?
Well, I probably should have been a buyer. I put up 216 points. What the heck? What a week. What are we doing here? I shouldn't have sold off half my team. And honestly, I sold the Suzuki. I sold Suzuki at the wrong time because he had a grand slam that night.
100%.
So that I could have maybe gotten close to Sam's 260 he put up on me.
Yeah.
But with the one grand slam. But no, I was kind of watching it all week. I feel like usually I am strong beginning of the week, and I just kept having the lead against the Padres and the Braves. I was like, I might be able to do this. But I mean, we're on a roll right now. I think we're third highest score of the week right now on this Tuesday evening, which is good enough for me.
Love it.
I'll absolutely hang that flag up. So yeah, I honestly, it's best you can ask for.
Yeah, you're sitting third. Actually, you're sitting right behind me.
Yeah,
in second. I love.
Yeah.
We're rolling at the top. I've
just
somehow scored 68 points already tonight. I haven't even looked at my team, so I don't. Even
Yeah,
know.
and I had that score because the guys I got at the from the dump date. So I'm like Waldron put up I think almost 20 points for me. So I was
nice.
Like, thanks, dude. Like I appreciate it.
Heck yeah.
So, yeah.
Nice, good stuff. All right, great. Well, anything else we wanted to add in about the power rankings, standings in general before we move on?
Now I'm ready to dive into these trades.
All right, let's get into it. So obviously, biggest news of the week. June 1st, dump date came by. Josh, just to kind of let you know how it went. I mean, Adam had a countdown. Eventually, it seemed like it was basically every hour, in the last 24 hours. But when it happened, there was, I think it was Jeff who put up a poll in the chat of just asking, like, how many trades are we actually going to get once this goes away, right? And I think it was like 1 to 5, 6 to 10, and 11 plus or something like that. And most people said 1 to 5 right off the bat. And I think we had just a little bit over that since it's happened. We've had a lot more come through, obviously, but I think right off the bat we only had a few kind of come through. But then there's been kind of trickle. Or a slow trickle, I guess, ever since then. So it'll be kind of interesting to see. But I have a few that I kind of wanted to hit on. And I know, obviously, Josh and Cal, you guys have the little document Cal put together too. So maybe what we'll do is I'll just kind of go around and each of us can maybe give some, I don't know, thoughts on some of the trades, if that works for you guys.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So why don't, Josh, I guess, is there one that really stood out to you that you kind of wanted to give your opinion on?
Oh, there's a few that stand out to me.
Okay.
I think I would start with probably the Royals trade of Aaron Judge to the Mets. One, because I'm not in the Yankees Discord channel right now. In the thing, I still am in the Discord, by the way. I've stayed away from there, but I can't even imagine how much they're talking about Aaron Judge in there. I don't even want to know, but it's probably a lot. He just had like one of the greatest months I've seen in recent history.
Crazy.
And then for a Yankees fan who's our defending champion, to go out and trade him, and frankly, I don't know. I don't feel like the return is that great. I know it's only 1 year and it's a $38 Aaron Judge, but it feels like you should be getting at least a prospect that feels like a guy you can't get on the waivers. Okay. And I guess that guy's supposed to be Tyler Black. Yeah. But Tyler Black for me is just outside of the cutoff of like the top tier of prospects. And there's really only been one guy that was moved today, and I'm sure one of you will mention that trade. There's only one guy that I would say counts in that tier, and that's the tier of prospects that is actually worth a lot to me in a trade. Sure. But for the most part, I feel like you can get some pretty quality players off the waivers if you just are hounding the waivers, getting budget and trade. So I don't know. It's just a shocking trade to see, and I just feel like I don't know what maybe it's just not a good market right now for people who are selling, but feels like even a light return.
So this is
what do you guys think?
This is exactly why I wanted you to go first, because I didn't want you to be biased by anything Cal and I would say, but you hit the nail on the head, honestly. And it's been a lot of talk right before the dump date was, will there even be very many buyers? So many teams came out pre-June 1 in the trade block channel saying that they were going to be sellers. There were very few people who were coming out and legitimately saying, like, I am only buying. So that was part of it. Two, Brendan, for whatever reason, has been saying he's been selling essentially since it feels like the beginning of the season.
He always says that, though.
I know,
right?
I know, 100% he does. 100% he does. And I think a lot of it for him was he was able to do what he did last year because of the amount of ammo that he had from selling off pieces. And so he felt like maybe because he wasn't going to push for anything this year. And to be honest, he's in the playoffs right now too. So like that's the crazy part. But you know, since he may not make a push this year, well, I'll get rid of some higher end 2024s, see what I can get back. Him and I talked. Obviously, I was the one who traded him Judge last year to help him win. Him and I talked, but I wasn't willing to even give up what he got there. So it's very different this year, and I think a lot of it comes from owners getting smarter. Right, I think that's a big part of it. But then I also just think the market for people to want to hang on to stuff is a lot heavier than it used to be. Cal? Would you agree with that?
Well, this deal, I don't know. It's tough. I don't think this deal is as bad as maybe you guys are saying. But then again, what do I know? But I'd probably say that for the market that Brendan was given, and the fact that Judge coming off of such a historic month, I don't think bodes as well as it could have, just because it's like so you're only gonna get a worse product from here.
Yeah.
So, and also one thing I did see is that he also got the Mets first rounder, which is like you just basically you gave them Judge to get a worse pick essentially.
Yeah.
Because the Mets are going to be a much better team. That was probably the one thing that kind of like raised my eyebrow a bit. We're just like, I mean, I totally get what you guys are saying. Whereas in like probably years past, this would have fetched a much higher price. But like you said, for where we are at now in the league that we are, I think this is probably going to be close to. I'd say it's below average return, but I think it's closer to average than maybe we would think.
Yeah, and I'll clarify at least my point as well. As I don't think it's terrible by any means, but I'm in the, and I feel like Josh is kind of saying the same thing. It's not that it's terrible, but given what we've certainly seen in the past in returns for superstars, right? You know, that's certainly something that I think we take into account, just, you know, naturally. But I guess Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I will say this, that like these superstars on these teams would probably have gotten sold earlier, so you get more time with them.
True.
Whereas, you know, we're kind of halfway through this, not exactly half, but you know, we're about halfway through this thing already.
Yeah.
So I think that does change it a little bit as well, what you can actually get just legally.
Well, and I know as a buyer, like for me right now, I have no interest in trading a first round pick or, you know, any of my top prospects for half of a year of a guy. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's an Aaron Judge who's having the best season in the history of baseball. I'm not going to, I don't want to do that to my team, even if it means, you know, I sacrifice winning a World Series or whatever. I would rather win a World Series differently than that, than sacrifice a bunch of stuff. And I don't know, Josh, do you feel like when you were kind of in that position, I know you were certainly a buyer multiple times, you know, do you feel like you ever, you know, wanted to be more reserved because you didn't want to sell off those pieces, or were you kind of like, I'm going to go all in at times?
Well, I think you saying that might actually prove that this isn't all. Maybe the trade is about as good as it could have been, because I feel like Tyler Black again is right on that line of it really depends on your opinion of him. Do you consider him in that top echelon of player where once you get him, you just have to hold on to him? There are certainly prospects like that. And to move him takes a great cost. Or is he part of just like the rest, where it's really just kind of luck of the draw almost? And to get a guy right on the border of that, and then also a first round pick that isn't likely going to be lottery, but probably is about as best as he could have done. So when you put it that way, I can see a little more of the merits of the trade. As for your question though, I feel like I mean, you can see what I did last year. I would say I went about as all in as you could have.
Yeah.
And I still feel like, and you can ask Rourke if he agrees, because, you know, Rourke just got the team and, you know, he didn't know what my plans for it were. But I still feel like I had the team in a position to compete the next year despite going all in. And that all comes down to not my ability to know prospects at all, but my ability to just buy other people's prospect rankings, and just be a hound on the waiver wires and keeping my my minors filled with guys that I can move. I mean, a lot of these guys, honestly, that got moved in this deadline are guys that I had my hands on at some point. So like, I feel like I was pretty aggressive. You know, I don't value draft picks very highly at all, especially my own. and I just am willing to move any prospect that I feel like I can replace on waivers. The guys I'm not willing to move are like Roman Anthony, who I consider in that upper echelon.
Yeah, we all remember that very, very fondly, very, very fondly. And I think to your point, you make some great points there for sure. But the talking about another trade that Brendan made, and this certainly won't be all about the Royals, but just to hit on that point as well in terms of a return. You look at a guy like Logan Webb. Now we're talking about starting pitcher, obviously higher tier, right? He takes him and gets a first round pick from the Yankees. So it's going to be their first round pick. Again, probably near or around where the Mets pick is going to be, I would think. And then Robleski off of that too. This is a starting pitcher on a 2024 contract, much cheaper than Judge, $20 cheaper, but also on a 2024, but also a starting pitcher. Do we like that return more than the Judge return?
Well, I'll just jump in and say Robleski is one of the guys that I had my hands on at one point and was actually a guy I had to cut from my minor league squad because there just were so many guys I liked on the waivers. So this to me just kind of proves my point that you kind of can just move these guys, and there's a million of them, it feels like at times. So I don't even know how Robleski got to the Yankees. I want to say as soon as I dropped him, the Mets immediately scooped him up and then kind of dangled him in front of me. That vaguely rings a bell. Maybe I just have my New York teams crossed, but yeah. So I guess no, I don't like the return better because this is a guy that is so. Like I dropped him. There was that many good prospects on the waivers, and I mean he's a good prospect. I will say that. So I owned him for a reason, but no. And again, it's because Brendan loves drafts picks, and I do not. So that's probably the big difference here. We've seen that in both trades. He got a first round pick. Yeah,
he definitely values that. I mean, all of my conversations with him surrounded first round picks essentially, or guys that were first round picks, right? So yeah, I definitely get that there. Cal, let's move to you. What's one trade you felt like you wanted to kind of hit on?
Yeah, this one kind of jumped out to me when I saw it come across, and it was it looks like it was Marlins and Astros. Marlins clearly trying to go for it, and this was one of those where did they kind of go a little too far with it? So one that I'd seen, it was they send to the Astros, the Marlins send to Astros, they send Montez, which that's really all I saw. I saw Montez. I'm like, what is going on there? They send 2 second-round picks, one for 2025, one for 2026. Honestly, looks like a couple of throw-ins we got. I'm not really worried about naming them. And in return, Marlins get kind of a push towards the end of the season here. They're going to get Dansby Swanson on a $26 first and Aaron Savali on a $22 first as well. So you get a bat that you need, and you get a pitcher. I don't think that. I mean, Savali might be keepable if he performs well. I don't think he's going to be $20 worth. That's like pushing it. He's got to like really play well to warrant keeping. Swanson, definitely not. I don't think that's a $26 shortstop right there. So a very steep price, I would think, for giving up what I believe to be probably a top 20, 15 prospect. To get 2 guys for your run. If it pays off and he goes on a deep playoff run, and no one's going to care. But probably will care if Montez is what a lot of people are saying he could be. So that was one that I think Evan selling off was a pretty solid return.
Can I just throw on top of this so we can loop 2 of the trades in here? The Marlins also traded Jackson Jobe.
Yeah, that was going to be the one I was going to hit on next.
So I just want to loop those in together because similar to Montez, kind of is like the guy you see in the trade. In return, got an elite relief pitcher in Class A, and then future Red Sox, Randy Tatis Jr.
Breaking news.
Well, and I was going to say too, like I love prospects, but I am not nearly as knowledgeable as most people in this league. When it comes to just, especially knowing statistically, where guys are at and stuff. I don't follow it as much as everyone else does. Job, obviously someone who's been kind of high up for a little while at least now, so certainly a more recognizable name. I don't know as much about Montez. To be honest with you, what is it about? Because I look at that too, and I look at the Astros return as being really good. I think the other trade for Job is a much better trade for the Marlins than the first one they made. But does Montez make up for that on the other end, or what's your guys' opinion there?
I think
I'll say this about Montez. Who is Evan, the Astros manager?
yes,
Yep.
yeah.
All right, that checks out to me because I used to actually host a prospects podcast. I wasn't the guy who knew anything, but the guy who did the podcast with me, the actual analyst, was a big Montez guy, and the way he would break it down. And the reason I asked if that was Evan because I know Evan listened to that podcast.
Gotcha.
And basically, the way that he broke Montez down in the simplest terms, without getting too much into it, is you look at the swing and you see one person, and one person only, and that's Yordan Alvarez. And it just so happens that Montez has Yordan Alvarez as a swing coach, and the power and the
Interesting.
results are very similar. So he gets a ton of comps to Yordan, and I think that. When you watch, as soon as you see that comp and you see the swing, it's uncanny, and that leads to a lot of hype. And then the results are there as far as like the actual outcome in terms of power. So he's kind of a massive elite power bat.
Gotcha. Okay. And again, I know the name certainly, but have not done any sort of research on him. So that's good to know. Cal, what were you going to say about?
I forget. I was hoping I would go first because I was just gonna say like baby Jordan. That's really the
Gotcha.
only selling point you really need. And guy has not had an OPS like under 950 in any level he's been in through rookie ball through A ball. So he's been absolutely. He's 19 right now in A ball. So which is probably where he should be for how good he is. So I would think he'd be at Double A soon. I'm hoping by end of the year he'd be at Double A.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think that going forward, he's probably going to be on some like pretty high on some lists preseason next year.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Great. So for me, the next one that I thought was interesting, I wanted to go actually to one of the Giants trades. If I can find it here, it was Giants.
While you're looking
Rangers.
for that,
Yeah, go for it.
While you're looking for it, I just want to add on top of this, moving Montez, who I think is similar to Black and that he's borderline in that tier that it should cost quite a bit to move him. And then also moving a guy who's undoubtedly in that tier for me and Jackson Job.
Yeah.
The Marlins better be in the green. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Because that is some big pushing in their chips. Now maybe the Marlins have a similar mindset to me that there's a lot of prospecting to be done, and so they're confident that they can make moves like that. But those are two guys that I would have hesitated to move. So I think he better see some results.
So
this
is the other Frank from ABL 4. I don't know if you remember him. He runs the Royals in ABL 4. He was the AL representative in the World Series over there. It's part of, and he's been very active over there. It's part of why he was brought over to the ABL. So I know he's at least very knowledgeable. I personally have not had any conversations with him about prospects or anything like that. But just to give you kind of a quick scope of maybe who or I guess what the concept might be behind him moving those guys.
Yeah, my only point is it's the type of trades where you need to see results.
Correct.
And with another guy in his division and the Mets being hyper aggressive, and then Adam, who seems to be having quite a good season. Now, I will say, Adam has a thing that he just does not trade. I don't know if that will change because he's been waiting for a team like this to make some trades. But I found Adam to be hard to trade with, and I feel like I can say that because I know people found me hard to trade with because I was just a robot plugging numbers into my algorithms.
That's why.
But Adam's another guy I feel like isn't going to trade. So maybe that also is giving him confidence. But if I'm him and I see the Mets also going big, I'm like, okay, this better work. I better have correct evaluations.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think you're well within the right to make comments on how people trade and that kind of stuff. I mean, you experienced enough of it, and we all have our quirks, right? I'm sure there have been plenty of people who have said Cal and I are hard to trade. Well, maybe not Cal. Cal's pretty easy,
apparently not.
But me, I'm sure it's happened as well. So. But yeah, so the trade that I wanted to kind of talk about from the Giants' perspective was between them and Sam's Rangers. So the Rangers got Martin, I think is it Gelhoff, I think is how you say it, and Quintero for Pablo Lopez. And Lopez is, again, someone who I am very, very acquainted with, just obviously being a Twins fan, has not... It sucks so much because he was on so many Cy Young lists in the preseason, at least that I saw, and I hate that because that always
Twins
means...
Daily Instagram.
Oh my gosh, man. It always means that because they are a Minnesota athlete, that they are not going to live up to that hype. And not to say that he's had a horrible season, but he certainly has not had a Cy Young season by any means. But I look at that trade, and I think Sam actually got a decent return for that. It's hard for me to envision Lopez being a keeper at 41 next year. I certainly think you could get him for that or less in the auction again. So being able to get, and again, none of these three prospects are big names by any means, but to me, I look at that and I say that's a pretty decent return. Sam's not competing this year. He got three guys who I'm assuming he likes. Martin's been a guy that I've liked for a while. So yeah, that was just kind of something that I thought was really interesting. I think it's cool that they're all, I guess, Dodgers players.
I'm making sure that feels crazy.
I was just saying,
I'm making sure I didn't screw up my sheet.
I don't know if that
because that feels wild.
Yeah, I don't know if
no, that's correct. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, it is. Okay. My goodness.
So
okay, yeah, I was looking at it right now, kind of silently panicking over here, like, oh god.
I mean, and maybe that's.
I know for sure Martin and Quintero.
Yeah, no, they all are.
Yeah, I know Martin is for sure, but it's interesting. Maybe that was motivation. I don't know. I'm not really sure, but what are you guys? Well, I guess Josh, let's go to you first. How do you feel about that? Again, and I can. Well, I guess you probably can't see. Maybe you'll be able to see it eventually on stream. But with the San Francisco lineup specifically now with Pablo Lopez, he has Seth Lugo, Cutter Crawford. They still got Bello, obviously, Gaussman, Lopez, Maeda as starters. How does that make you feel?
That's actually a little interesting who he has. It's funny. This feels like a trade I would have made. And so in that sense, of course, I like it from the Giants' perspective. And it's funny that he also has, I'm assuming, pried Gaussman away from Jeff, unless he went back into the auction. But I think Gaussman was a guy that I kind of coveted all of last year.
Okay.
So that's also funny that he hasn't. But hearing some of the people he kept from my pitching staff, because I feel like I left him a pretty good staff is interesting. And I actually want to touch real quick on the Cutter Crawford trade, because it was technically before
go for it.
Or was it before or after the deadline, Cal? It was with you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think one of the first trades. It was supposed to happen at midnight, but I think work was probably asleep by that time. But yeah, it was. That thing was in the inbox probably like 5 days prior to it being done. So it was ready to go.
It's interesting because Rourke, this is another trade I feel like I could have made, and I say that with one caveat, that I wonder if this trade gets made, if Rourke is not a Red Sox fan.
Yeah.
And I say that because Hampton is obviously the prize of the trade for Cal, and he's a Yankee, and Crawford's obviously the prize of the trade. I mean, unless we want to argue $5 Fab is, but Crawford's the prize of the trade for Rourke, and he's a Red Sox. I wonder what Rourke's thinking about this now after Crawford's start today, because it's yet another not so great start. And I want to say now he has quite a few in a row, at least over a month now of Crawford not being what he was to start the season, or even kind of what we saw towards the end of last season. So I'm curious if Rourke's shaken by that at all, because Hampton's a guy I actually personally have in that elite tier. I really like him.
I know, because I tried last year. That was kind of like a revenge trade for me, because I was like, maybe Rourke will do it. Well, maybe he'll say yes, because I tried last year and you were like, no dice.
With that being said, you can do a lot with $5 Fab.
Yes.
I don't know if he can replace Hampton, but I wouldn't be shocked if he gets close. Give him 5 shots, and I think that can happen. So I don't hate the trip. I wanted to comment on that quickly because it is funny. Rourke just seems like of the same mind as me. But back to the trading
Well, I was just going to say he just messaged in chat, so I wanted to bring up. He said he does still like Cutter, for what it's worth. So, and again, who knows if the bias is coming into play there or not. But he said he still likes Cutter. He did like Hampton too. My assumption is going to be he's at the top of the standings. He'd rather have Cutter than Hampton if he had to choose this year.
Yeah, and obviously not one start's not going to completely change his mind,
Yeah.
but I just wonder if more doubt has creeped in. But I think as Red Sox fans, we can both agree we have quite a pitching coach there right now. So if there is a lot of reasons to think he will turn it around, there's obviously a lot of reasons to like him. I'm sure Cal and him wish that he gave a longer contract to Cutter, even with his struggles of recent.
Yeah.
But I'm lost in the spreadsheet, which is embarrassing for me who lives in spreadsheets all day.
I blame myself since I constructed it.
So the trade that what was the trade? Someone tell me.
Are you talking about the Cutter trade?
Or the previous trade
no,
we kind of went off of, I think. Oh shoot! What were we just talking about before we got into this one?
Was it the one I was talking about?
The
Lopez
Pablo
trade I got.
Yeah,
Okay,
Lopez.
Okay, so I love this trade. I think I like it, especially for the Giants because it's a trade I feel like I would have made. I think I already mentioned that.
Yep.
From Sam's perspective, I do think, like you said, Tyler, you get a decent return. However, I always am weary when it feels more like a quantity over quality type of approach. And so anytime I see three guys, I get a little nervous, especially when there's not a clear, this is the stud in the trade guy, which I don't think this trade has.
Yep.
But with that being said, I think Martin and Quintero in particular are pretty good. Now I will say, just continuing with the theme, is Quintero's the guy I got off waivers last year.
Yep.
And Martin, I can't remember if I got him off waivers or if I acquired him in a trade, but I know he wasn't expensive. And so he's similar in that tier. And I don't know how Rourke got Jake Geloff, but I would assume it was in similar fashion. So if you're Rourke and you move what essentially equates to $3 fab, maybe call it 4 or 5 in terms of value for Pablo Lopez, I mean, hell yeah, that's a big win for a guy who has a chance to win it this year.
Yeah, from a value perspective, I think it doesn't get much better for a contender, especially to get a top of the line rotation guy, right? And not even have to move a top 100 prospect. I think that's regardless of price, right? Obviously, if Lopez turns it around and is crazy Cy Young second half of the year, all the better, right? Maybe you do keep him for 41 next year, but yeah, that's kind of interesting. Real quick, 'cause I know we're kind of coming up on an hour here. Why don't each of us, real quick, and Josh, we'll start with you. Just hit on one other trade real quick that you maybe thought was really interesting.
Actually, can I use my time to answer a question in the chat?
Heck yeah, go for it.
I think it's a pretty interesting question. Because I'm coming from a perspective of I'm seeing this all through the lens of my experience in ABL. But Kevin points out, and I'm not surprised it was Kevin because I feel like I took a couple shots at him, or at least made his seat a little warm.
Yeah.
He says, does the shots at prospects view change with the decrease in fab this year? Which is a good point. There is less fab to work with this year, which inherently makes all prospects more valuable.
Yep.
And so, I think absolutely that shifts the value. But what I think we're seeing here is, and this was, I don't really want to open up old debates, but we are seeing fab moved in the deadline. And so I do think that, yes, it shifts, but I do think the total amount of fab being used is not dissimilar to previous years. So as long as that fab is acquirable, then I don't think the value has changed. However, if it gets to a point that people predicted where you just can't get a hold of the people that have the fab because they're checked out, then prospects become a lot more valuable. So I guess you're betting on what will happen with the people who aren't using their fab down the stretch. I think that will really dictate how valuable these prospects actually are.
Well, and Cal, would you agree that it certainly, well, based on the chat, it certainly felt like fab was going to be really worthwhile for people to try and get, right? People were going to want it for sure. But then it's also seemed that, we have a group of owners that it's pretty easy to get a hold of almost everyone, right?
Right.
So I haven't felt that side of it where the fab has been hard to come by. I think anyone who has wanted it so far has been able to get it. Again, it's been tough because most people aren't going to trade. You know, the only real fab trades that were made were like, hey, I'm going to drop this guy. Does anyone want him for $1? You know, those kind of trades. Whereas now we're seeing a lot more potentially being moved. I'm, as someone who has never used fab a ton to kind of cycle the prospects, like you talked about, Josh, that's something I want to do. But I also, want to use my fab for some MLB guys to fill holes, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting point that it kind of depends on the market. It depends on who has the fab, in a sense, that determines how valuable it is, how valuable prospects can be, et cetera. So, yeah, I think that's really, really interesting. Cal, did you have one more trade you wanted to kind of hit on?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I kind of this came across today, and I actually within the past 3 hours. It was the Reds and Rays where Lenny is sending 2 of his first round picks. One of them being like a pretty nice lottery pick of his own, to get Jose Barrios, who is a $25 2026. Kind of feels like Lenny is betting on himself being able to compete within the next 2 years, especially like leveraging his like pretty nice capital of 2026 picks and 2027. Oh, I didn't see it was 2027. I'm an idiot. So even then,
I thought you were taking a shot at him, Cal.
No, fair. That would have been. I should have rolled with that and been like, dude, come on, get real with me. No, but I was very surprised to just like, all right, who cares about these 2 first round picks? We'll just get Barrios, and we'll basically. Does this mean that Lenny is going to go hard in the auction? Just kind of blow up the team the next year or two and just go for it. It's just kind of like the start of a revamping instead of like maybe a slow rebuild.
Yeah, it's really felt like Lenny has tried a lot of different things and almost like a different strategy every year. And nothing has worked in his favor. I think early on, potentially in year 1, he dealt with a lot of injuries. And then I think it was maybe year 2 where he drafted like an all-star outfield or something like that, but then the rest of his team was garbage, or so he's kind of run into a lot of different obstacles, I know. And Barrios obviously has been great this year, so it's not like he's buying low or buying high. Like I think that's a good price for a guy who's performing in that sense. It's just a very interesting trade, like you said, given that he has 2 wins on the year. It's obviously not a play for this year. He must not be too worried about his farm system being able to come up and help him. So yeah, I'm leaning towards what you said, where I think the auction might be where he's looking to put all of his chips next year. Josh, go ahead, Cal. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna follow with that. I thought it was kind of interesting. I think it kind of is like a big flag for Lenny to kind of just overhaul the team. It's gonna be kind of fun if he does go that route. It will be a ton of fun to see him blow up in the auction.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm going to talk about my last one here was actually a trade between the Braves and Orioles. So Imanaga and Hoskins going to the Orioles, and then Lesko, really prospect-wise, Lesko, Bonilla, Guerrero, and I think it's Duno is how you pronounce it.
Duno?
Is it Duno? Oh, yeah.
I got
me. Going to the Braves along with a third, Dennis Santana, throwaway, Garrett Cooper, throwaway. No offense, Josh, no offense. But interest. I don't mind the return that Atlanta got. To me, this is one of the more questionable ones because I look at a guy like Imanaga who's having a pretty decent year. Obviously, and then Hoskins coming back, we all know what he can do. Milwaukee's not like this necessarily powerhouse, but they at least have a decent lineup. I was surprised that he didn't get more. I had some early talks with Jake about just pitching in general, and I definitely feel like I could have given a good return, comparable to that for those guys. Not to mention, I also was looking for a first baseman at the time. So Yeah, I just thought that one was really interesting as well. Josh, do you have thoughts on that? I'm sure you got thoughts on the prospect side of it, for sure, at least.
Well, I mean, my primary thought is this is one of those trades that has so many players involved that my brain just breaks.
Yeah.
And perhaps that is a result of me being so reliant on algorithms and spreadsheets and whatnot. And when you start plugging in this many players, the error bars get massive, and so they're not useful at this size. And so I stay away from this. So I have no practice with these, and no practice relying on my own actual evaluations. This is one of those hard to compute ones, but my gut is siding with you, Tyler. That it just screams like he got quantity over quality, and I'm always looking for quality. And I want to say, I think I saw you guys talking about it in the Discord that Imanaga has taken a step back of recent. I haven't honestly paid the closest attention since he embarrassed the Red Sox. At that point, I crossed him off the list. I no longer follow his career. He just reminds me of our front office's incompetencies, because we could have had him.
Yeah,
but go ahead, Tyler.
100%. No, I was just gonna say he really struggled 2 weeks ago against Milwaukee. He actually scored negative points, and then he actually pitched today, or is he currently pitching? I think he might be currently pitching. He's gone 4.1. He's given up 5 runs, but only 1 of them earned, and he's got 6 strikeouts already. So he's got 14 points already tonight. So he's sitting in a decent spot. But yeah, he blew up last week. Other than that, though, I mean, prior to that, he only had in 5 of his 8 previous games, he didn't give up an earned run. And the other 3, he gave up a total of 5. So he's had a heck of a year. His ERA is sitting at a 1.88 right now. So it's a
shame he's on the Cubs.
Yeah, he's pitching pretty well.
It's a shame,
but
yeah, I think I agree with you, Tyler. I think I think Steven did quite well here. And I just would have loved to see the conversations they had of convincing Steven to move for prospects. I think that would just be fun to watch.
Yeah, it would have been really interesting to see kind of where Steven had all of those guys, on his list of lists. I'm sure he's got somewhere. Cal, anything from you on that end?
I lean a lot more heavily towards the Steven side of the deal. Okay. Unfortunately for Jake. I think the flagship prospect here would be Lesko. Yeah. And I can't remember the last time a high school prospect that pumps 100 kind of panned out. All I could think of is like Riley Pine, Tyler Kolek.
Yeah.
Like those flash in my head. I can't think of anyone that's made it and like been. I mean, even if you get Imanaga, that'd be nice. That's what we want to replace. Hypothetically. But Imanaga is definitely a keepable asset for Steven if he chooses to. Totally. So I think to basically give up 4 nothings to Steve just because he'll just use that for a fab within the second that he loses these prospects and go get like I said, like a 17, 19-year-old and replace it and be happy with it. I basically got him for free. I would think in Steven's mind, I would think he got him for free. But I understand what Jake would be trying to do here. Just like, listen, I'm going to sell off what I can. I'm going to get as many chips at the casino. Hopefully one of them hits. Maybe I'll just start going to the slot machine. Yeah. But yeah, it's best you can do, I guess. But I don't know. It's I thought it'd be a lot more for Imanaga.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, that's about it for dump stuff. The last piece, I guess. Well, I'll ask first. Anything else you guys wanted to add before we kind of move on to just this week preview?
No.
Okay. Feel good. All right. Let's move.
I'll just say it's good
Josh.
to see the league still has. I was gonna say it's good to see the league still has its fastball. This is the stuff that makes ABL so great.
100%. And my hope will be that this will continue. Right. The reason that we've had kind of a slow drip and not just a massive, 1 day of trades is because guys are having constant communication. There's constant changing of valuations, etc. So yeah, it'll be really, really interesting to see. But I think we all agree. I think it's good to always see this. All right, let's move on to schedule for this week. Just check that out real quick. I'll get it pulled up here. For me, my first one, and Cal, I think I stole this from you. I know, but I liked how you put it so much that I'm gonna keep on it. Our win watch for period 10. started yesterday. The White Sox this week, the only remaining winless team in the league, they have the Rangers, the Padres, and the Nationals this week. All three very winnable. I think it'll be interesting to see, though, given I know Tom's obviously selling hard on his prospect or on his bigger named MLB guys. So it'll be interesting to see if he's got anything in the tank left to put something together, but certainly a win watch there. The Mets, they again made tons of trades to improve their team. They have Colorado, Detroit, and Las Vegas. So depending on which Colorado team and which Vegas team shows up, I think those could be 3 winnable matchups for the Mets for sure to try and catch up to Adam. And then Seattle too. Seth's been really, really active, but he's got a tough slate this week. He's got the Dodgers, the Rockies, and the Yankees as well. So he's making moves, obviously trying to make his team better. And he kind of said this is his last window for him to compete. He felt like, so it'll be interesting to see what he can do there. How about on your end? Anything you saw?
AL West is kind of like an arms race over there between the A's and the Mariners. So the one thing I was looking at is because the Mariners have kind of a hard schedule, A's definitely have a hard schedule. Yeah. They're playing the Pirates, Mets, and Giants this week. So I mean, honestly, both these teams could both go 0-3. Who knows what happens? I think that maybe Dave might be able to squeak out a win over Duke. I don't know. Depends. But that was something I was keeping my eye on because the West is a little tight right now. And then one thing is that the Marlins, we've been talking them up, and they're going to face their first huge test right away after all this buying. They're going to be facing the Phillies. So we'll see how that goes. Adam's been kind of staying a level course, biding his time, keeping his boys. I do think that the Phillies will probably hand it to the Marlins, and maybe
interesting prediction.
I do think I have a lot of faith in Adam.
All right.
And I don't know if the Marlins really got enough done to kind of stick it to Adam. So we'll see how it goes.
Interesting. All right. Yeah. I mean, definitely some good matchups across the board. Plenty we didn't even talk about, but it's getting close I think the separation certainly has started to really kind of manifest itself. I think you'd probably agree with that. Just looking at the standings, it's pretty clear who's in the playoff picture, who's not. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. With that being said, that's kind of all we got this week. So, Josh, I just want to say thanks so much for coming on, man. It was awesome to have you. It's awesome to have this conversation. Anything you kind of wanted to add or say in before we head out here?
Yeah, just shout out Kevin for sitting through this podcast as we just other Kevin, I think we're referring to him.
There you go.
For sitting through this podcast is it seems like we have taken a shot at him any chance we can get. Here I am thinking you guys are going to preview the schedule for me next week, and all of a sudden Al is talking about how Kevin's still got no shot against Adam. So shout out Kevin. Those are my final words. No, but seriously, thanks for having me. Obviously, I still hold a special place for this league, and it's just great to get to chat ABL some more, despite not actually being a part of it anymore.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I think that speaks just to the league in and of itself, right? That people are still around and still following it and still a part of it. So awesome to obviously have you on. We'll obviously keep it open in the future. We'll see this once we figure out the audio issues. It ended up working out pretty well, I think. So with that being said, I think that's all we got. So thanks everyone for hanging around. I think this is by far and away our most viewed episode so far this season, which is awesome to see. So appreciate everyone being here, and enjoy the rest of your week, guys. We'll talk to you next week.
Yep. Love you guys.
Bye, everyone.
Love the chase, I love the chase. Set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want, and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, don't fund it. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thinking, don't take for granted. Stay on board. Now wake up, it's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror, if he is no afraid of me. It's not working out, maybe